audience participation part.
Almost there. All right, everyone, we're live.
Great, finally.
Almost there.
It's 6:43. We have a quorum. This is a special board meeting of the Weston Board of Education. Tonight we have two agenda items. Agenda item number one is we're going to vote on the appointment of an independent hearing officer for discipline and residency related issues. And agenda item number two is a discussion of the health and safety protocols for the start of the school year. Two housekeeping items I want to go through before I hand it over to Lisa. First, I'd like to welcome two new board members, Sharon Ferraro, who basically is going to take the seat vacated by Gina Albert at the end of the school year, and Dave Felton, who's going to take the seat that was left by Hillary Coyner also at the end of the school year. I want to welcome both of them as new board members, and thank you for raising your hand and agreeing to serve the town and the school district and to join the fun here on the Board of Ed.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Tony. Me too.
This evening, there's no public comment. It's a special meeting of the board. We're going to reserve public comment to our regular board meeting in September. A couple of other items. One is the executive order that the governor's executive order was extended to the end of September. Obviously, that's going to drive a lot of the health and safety protocols for the start of the school year that Lisa will go through. That's also going to mean for the board that we're probably going to stay in Zoom for our committee meetings as well as our regular board meetings, since it's going to be absolutely no fun for the board and the public if we're in masks in the middle school, because no one will be able to really understand anything we're saying. So I think keeping it in Zoom for committee and monthly meetings, I think was going to be optimal for everyone, especially for the public, since that this mode of having meetings over the last year, I think has been extremely efficient for everyone. So until further notice, we're going to stay this way, and hopefully as we get into the school year, we'll figure it out as we go along. So Lisa, let me hand it over to you for item number one.
Item number one is the specific, the hearing officer.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we would like to request to the board that you appoint an independent hearing officer for the following reasons. For student involved in serious disciplinary issues, specifically expulsion, we have used a hearing officer in the past, and it's our recommendation that every year we just renew and that the board votes on this practice. In addition to just for a student expulsion, we would also like to include the issues of residency in Weston. The reason being that an independent hearing officer, I think, sort of takes away from the board having to deal with, quite frankly, situations that are we're a small community, and it could be your neighbor, people that you know, and it's just an easier, impartial way to do it. And what happens is that the hearing officer comes down and we present the information, and then he issues actually a recommendation to us. So I would ask that the board consider both of these things for the 2021-22 school year.
Great. This is out of an executive session that we had, an appropriate executive session to discuss some of the specifics around the hearing officer, but we needed to actually bring it out into public for a vote. So there is no motion on CABE right now. Maybe we can have a motion. Melissa, do you want to?
I think we're using that board book now, right?
I know it's not in board book.
Okay.
It's not in
Okay.
board book.
That's fine. Okay, so I move that the Weston Board of Education adopt a hearing officer for school year 2021 to 2022.
Can I have a second?
Second,
All right, thanks, Taffy. All in favor?
Aye.
I Taffy,
Yeah, I think we have to go through it individually and state your name.
Yeah.
Okay.
on, not normally, in meetings, we don't have to state your name in person, but here we have to state our name, just so
Okay,
you know. So you say I Taffy.
okay,
Aye, Sharon.
okay.
I'm Melissa.
Hi, Victor.
One more.
Hi, David.
Yep. All opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's go to item number 2, which is discussion of health and safety protocols at the start of the 21-22 school year. Just a bit of background. As part of the executive order, if everyone remembers from last year, it's ultimately the superintendent decision on the mode of attendance as part of that executive order. While the board is absolutely engaged and interested in the mode of attendance and has a lot of questions usually, there is no requirement for the board to vote. It ultimately, as part of the executive order, the superintendent's decision. So I think tonight was, everyone has, what was Lisa distributed the health and safety protocols last week. I thought it would be good discipline to basically go through them with the board. The board has any questions, I'm sure the board members have also received questions from the public. So if you have any questions after Lisa goes through this, this is our opportunity to ask those questions. Okay, Lisa.
Thank you, Tony. First, I'd really like to thank the administrative team, our nursing supervisor, Cheryl Zulkeski, who is also on the call, as well as the Westport Health Director, Mark Cooper, and our medical advisor, Dr. Marks. As I said in my letter to families, we really appreciate your patience this summer. If you had asked me to project what we would be doing now, back in June, I was hopeful that we would be in a different situation. Unfortunately, we are not with the Delta variant. And really our main priority is for the health and safety of our students, staff, and families. And the goal is to have in-person learning. Students learn best when they are in person, in school. They need to be in person and in school. And we need to put as many mitigating strategies in place to ensure that happens. Now, what we're talking about right now, frankly, is for the month of September. We are committed to monitoring this. Every week, we seem to hear something new. There's already been a change that I will talk about. But it's important that we continue to monitor the situation because, the reality is this is where we are, as much as we wish that we weren't here. And this variant is very, very concerning. And both the two gentlemen from the Weston Westport Health District meeting this afternoon at 3:00, we had another meeting. They're very concerned about the spread. And they said that there were 5 new cases in Weston just in the last 2 days. Last week, they had 33 cases in Westport. He was still gathering the information, Mark Cooper, about in Weston. It's very concerning the rate that it's spreading and how it's spreading. So with that being said, I'd just like to go through a few things of the protocols, noting that this is a situation that last year we talked a lot about being able to pivot and to change direction as needed, and we will continue to do so. We all know that vaccination is the most important prevention strategy, and I'm really happy to report that of the eligible students in Weston, 12 to 17-year-olds, Health Director Cooper said that 73% of our eligible students are vaccinated, which is really terrific, and I think should provide us with a sense of, at least for me, it gives me a sense of calm, a little bit of calm with that age group. Keeping that in mind, that we still know that, you know, the youngest learners are not able to get vaccinated, and how can we best take care of them? And I should also do a shout out that if you have a vaccination card for your child, the middle school nurse and the nursing supervisor, Ms. Solkeski, will accept a copy, and we can keep it on file. The benefit of that is that students that are vaccinated, it has to do with the quarantine, that they do not have to quarantine if they remain asymptomatic. We know that Governor Lamont has extended the mask mandate, and we will be following that mask mandate through September 30th. Basically, that means that students and staff will be wearing masks in the school building, on the buses. They will not be required for outdoor activities, including recess and physical education. We will do as much PE outside as possible, which is important because I know that families say, you know, my child will be in a mask for 7.5 hours. And that is really hard. And as a mom and a grandmother now, I get that. When I see the mask on my little grandson, my heart breaks. But there should be some comfort that during lunch, during recess, at mask breaks, during PE, which they at the lower schools do twice a week, and at the middle schools every other day, they're outside, they're running around, they do not have to wear masks. And the mask breaks, as I said, will continue, and at the high school as well during those free periods, lunch, everything else. The high school is beautiful courtyards where the students can go outside. Regarding contact tracing and quarantine, if you are sick, students should remain home when sick, staff should remain home when sick, and they should contact the school nurse, okay? You should contact the school nurse if you've been in contact with anyone that has tested positive for COVID-19. That's really important, to contact the school nurse in your building. But please, if you're sick and you're at home, you should be recuperating. You shouldn't be trying to log in and catch up with work. You should really be recuperating if you are sick at home and resting. Vaccinated individuals do not have to quarantine or isolate if asymptomatic, and the school nurse has the copy of their vaccination card. So that is great. If they are exposed, they do not have to. Unvaccinated students who are seated less than 3 feet from another student in the classroom will need to quarantine. What we are really striving to do is having our unvaccinated students be 3 feet or more. And that was a change this summer by the Connecticut State Department of Ed and the Public Health, where they issued that. And that's huge. If we can really try to get to that 3 feet of physical distancing, then they will not have to quarantine if they are asymptomatic. Unvaccinated students, however, who are exposed to a positive case at lunch, they're going to have to quarantine if they were exposed within 6 feet, which most of them will be, because the 6 feet distance is just really not possible. The length of the quarantine is 10 calendar days, but there are some provisions that I won't get into all the specifics, but it was in the letter, and that's all true. If you get a PCR test, not a home test, if you can provide the nurse with this test after the 5th day, then you can come back in 8 days. So there's a little bit of wiggle room. The biggest change from the letter that I sent you today is, after careful consultation with the health district, talking to the Director of Finance and Operations, Phil Cross, and the administrative team, if an unvaccinated student is on the bus, beginning the year, we are not quarantining the whole bus. We are moving towards students within 3 feet of the positive case. And you might say, well, how are you going to know who's within 3 feet? We are looking to put in some mitigating strategies. One of them actually came from a parent, shout out, thank you. It was another part of the country where they said have siblings sit together, which that's great, makes sense. Try to put the younger students more in the front of the bus. So we're going to work that out. Having assigned seats is a bit challenging because the bus driver really needs to keep his or her eyes on the road and not on the students. But I think that, you know, our students do rise to the expectation when we set clear expectations for the most part on that in the bus and at school, in the cafeteria, all those things. So we certainly are hopeful that we will be able to work within that. If you are, again, vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine if you're asymptomatic and exposed. Regarding the school day, we're trying to get back to as normal as possible. Food service operations are going to resume. We will continue to practice the physical distancing, 3 feet. Co-curricular activities and clubs will resume after school, which is great. We look forward to that. But if it's things that are indoors, students will have to wear the masks, advisors will have to wear the masks, and practice physical distancing. Athletics are going to resume in accordance with CIAC, and we're very lucky that Athletic Director Berkowitz is involved in the board up there and is right in the thick of things, and so I'm sure he can clarify any other questions for you. But that's huge that the athletes, the spectators will be able to be back. Parent meetings are going to be virtual for the first month of September until further notice. We had hoped to perhaps offer more of an option, but at this point, the recommendation is not to for the first month of school to see where this goes. Back to school night, same thing. There's just too many people within a closed space. And we really need to focus on, you know, getting the students, keeping the students and the staff in school. And that's so important. Meet the coaches, though, meet the teachers. We really wanted to be able to provide that for our students and our student athletes, especially our little ones who are going to be going off to school for the first time. And so they will occur with some different strategies outside, where permitted, people wearing masks, things like that. But we don't want to take away that opportunity, especially for our students, to experience meet the teacher at those key transition years like kindergarten, 3rd grade. Then we also have 6th and 9th grade with student orientations. We want to be able to have them. One of the things that has been raised, and we've seen a lot in the news, is the concept of mandated vaccines for staff. And I know that people within our own community have raised that possibility. And so I want to say that the 2 unions that we work with in the district are going to be meeting with us this week to discuss that situation, to move towards mandating vaccines for staff and what it would take to be able to support that mandate. I'm really pleased, though, to report that 94% of our staff in Weston, in a survey, indicated that they are vaccinated, because that, you know, no one here wants to get sick and have to be quarantined or anything like that. So we're in really good shape when you think that 94% of the staff is vaccinated. So that may be about approximately 30, more or less, that indicated that they were not vaccinated. They were unvaccinated, rather. And then to think of all of those students, 73% of our 12 through 17-year-olds are vaccinated. That's great. So that's kind of an overview. Again, I would like to stress that I know this is really hard, and it's an issue that it is a divisive issue. There are parents that want their kids unmasked. There are equally parents that want their kids masked. There are students that are, you know, they comply, but it breaks my heart when I see the students in masks and having to start the school again, year again like that. But the most important thing is that we are in person. We have a lot of work to do academically, social, emotionally, to meet the needs of our students, and we really want them in person. So where some people might think some of these things are extreme, for the first month of school to be able to get back to business as normal as possible, this is what we need to do. At this time, I would open it up to any questions. I might not have all the answers. Mark, Phil, Ken, Tracy, Cheryl might not have all the answers, but one thing that we are always willing to do is to admit if we don't know the answer and try to figure it out to the best of our ability. There will be more communications. The COVID manual, just today I was still updating it, but I would very much like to get it out by the end of the week. And it is a work in progress. I am not one to just say this is how it's going to be for the next 4 or 5 months. We will continually look at this on a weekly basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I do have one comment. I think it's around mandating vaccines for staff. You know, knowing this community, while 94% of the staff is vaccinated, it's the 6% that are not, that I'm sure we're going to get a lot of emails about. And so I think that it's important to note that we are working very closely with the unions to come up with the process. And it's not really only about mandating vaccines, it's about how to deal with the exception process. And so working our way through that, I think, is going to require a little bit of time, but know that we are working on it.
Yes, thank you, Tony. You know, it's there are reasons that people have not gotten a vaccine, and there will be exemptions, medical, religious, and there are people that might have a compromised immune system and cannot get the vaccine. And so what I would respectfully say to the community is that, you know, the first day of school, asking your child's teacher, are you vaccinated, puts that person in a very uncomfortable position. It's not about HIPAA. It's about the federal, you know, Disability Act. And asking that is, it's just really not a good thing to do. We are trying the very best we can, but there can be people that, for whatever reason, cannot, if it's a medical reason, cannot get this vaccine. And I certainly want to be sensitive to that. So know that we are doing the very best we can to ensure the safety and health and the well-being of all of our children in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, is one of those strategies that you're considering for the health and safety of both the unvaccinated teachers as well as the unvaccinated and vaccinated students that would be in those classrooms, you know, some type of testing protocol where they would be, you know, tested on a weekly or more frequent or less frequent basis, so that parents might have some comfort knowing that the classroom environment is safe, and the teacher themselves would probably feel some comfort in that as well. Is that something, you know, we're looking at that and perhaps maybe some other strategies?
Lisa's having audio difficulties right now. Hang on 1 second. She's going to reconnect. Sorry.
Melissa, I was going to ask the exact same question. I know that some of the other
Not to put words in Lisa's mouth, but I believe that is one of them, amongst others.
Okay. While we're waiting for Lisa to get her audio back, I have a question maybe Mark can answer, and that is, thus far, our athletes, when they're going back, are we looking at masks for games or practices, or how's that being handled?
Only for indoor sports. So for swimming and for volleyball, they will be in masks all the time, except obviously for swimming when they're in the pool, because that wouldn't really work really well. Snorkels maybe, but masks don't really help. So yeah, the volleyball will be participating and competing in masks again this year, as they did last fall, only because it's an indoor sport. And that's what's being recommended. For all of our outdoor sports, all the rest of our fall sports are outside right now. They will not be in masks. They will need to put a mask on if they go in the building for any reason to get their ice and water and equipment. But once they're outside, they do not have to be in masks. And we are obviously also highly recommending vaccinations. We all lived through last year when, you know, one positive test on an opposing team quarantined our whole team in different sports. And the more athletes that are vaccinated, the less athletes that will need to quarantine in that situation.
True. That actually leads to my second question, and this goes back to Lisa. Hopefully you have your audio, and that is, how are the parents supposed to be providing the proof of vaccination for the kids? You mentioned something about the middle school, but how about the high school kids as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. Both high school and the middle school families can email the nurse and the nursing supervisor. Is that correct, Ms. Zulkowski? So just an email copy of the card is fine, and she will keep it on file.
And that's going to be, there's going to be communication to the community about that, correct? About where to send that?
Yes, it was in my original letter, actually, but we can certainly send out another blast. The specific emails. Cheryl Zulkowski at westonps.org is for the high school, and Luz Benedict at westonps.org is the nurse. But we can reiterate that and send it out again in another communication. I believe we got quite a few cards, did we not, Ms. Zulkowski?
At least 100 in the past week since your letter went out.
Okay, then don't reiterate it necessarily based upon my question alone. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We can put it on Instagram, things like that. I'm happy to post it anywhere or remind anybody about it, because the more cards we have, the easier it is. And I think it just helps the overall process.
But Sharon raises a good point, and that is like how, on day one, when everyone's filing into school, are they flashing their card? Are they, do they have a special bracelet? Like what is it that says what prevents, my child who's not been vaccinated? Well, I mean, she has been vaccinated, but if she weren't, from just cruising into the school and saying, yes, I was vaccinated. Is there a checklist that we're, doing? What?
Yeah, I not only keep copies of all the cards in each individual health record, I also, as they come in, have an alphabetized list in the SNAP medical program. So it's a real easy, quick reference. We do not just take someone's word. I need a copy of the card, but we can't mandate that because it's optional whether the parent sends it in. But I think once the parents realize that this could avoid a 10-day quarantine for their student, I had been receiving some on and off throughout the summer, but bombarded this week since that letter went out. So it's a good thing.
Great. Another question. Oh, sorry, Tony.
No, go ahead, Taffy.
Wait, Taffy, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure my question didn't get lost in the shuffle since.
Oh, right. Thank you. You went ahead. Yep.
Mind waiting for just a
please.
minute?
Please.
Yeah, did.
I don't think Lisa heard it though.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a problem with my sound. I'm back though.
Okay, did you hear the question or you didn't?
No, I did not.
Okay, my question was about the unvaccinated teachers and maybe some measures that we might be considering both for the safety of the unvaccinated teachers and also the unvaccinated students and even the vaccinated students, and giving parents, I think, a lot of comfort in knowing that the classroom environment is safe. Are we considering options such as doing, a weekly COVID test for those individuals or other ideas?
What we are looking at right now is with regards to the mandated vaccines. And remember, this is the entire staff. It's not just the teachers, but if someone is, and again, this is in discussion, if there was going to be an exemption that is made, then the exemption, what we need to talk to them about and figure out the best way to make this happen is that they have to get a weekly test and show the test that they are negative. That's what's in discussion right now.
Okay, thank you.
I have received about 3 questions, and I think, Taffy, you had a follow-up, so I'll wait for you, Taffy, and then I have about 3 questions who I'm not sure it would be directed at, but probably Lisa.
Okay, David, mine's very quick. Thank you. And that is simply, what are we anticipating is the downside for those 6% of teachers who have not been vaccinated? And what I mean by that is they've not been vaccinated. Do they have any restrictions put on them as to how they can move about the school or how they can, do their jobs?
And again, I want to reiterate, and maybe it's being nitpicky. We're talking about the staff, not just the teachers. which is important.
Thank you.
Our
Oh,
staff
yep, yep, yep.
includes,
Yep.
security guards, grounds people, all of that. And what I would say is that, restricting people's movements within the school, we would not do that for unvaccinated students. So I could not imagine that we would do that for teachers. And again, I think that, mitigating strategies are things that include wearing the masks, being physically distanced a certain amount, washing hands, all of those kinds of things. But getting into some of these specific details of the how, with how it would be administered, we're just not there yet. To be frank, we're having the meetings late this week because it's important that we support our staff in this.
Right.
And as I said before, some of the people that they cannot get the vaccine, how can we support them be able to do their jobs, and also to feel comfortable that they are supported, that they feel comfortable, and that the public also feels comfortable.
I think that's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you.
Can I say something, Lisa?
Please.
What I was going to say is we have had discussions around this, and I know other districts that are thinking about mandating the vaccine for staff. With a written medical exemption from a physician, HR would get a copy of that. The superintendent would approve or not approve of what is being requested. And if they cannot medically get the vaccination, we would request that they go, say, every Friday for a test, on their own.
Right.
Testing is free, obviously, but then that way they'd have the weekend to get the results, and they would show HR their negative results each Monday.
I mean, you have not instigated that as yet. You're just thinking about that as an option.
Just came up a couple days ago. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, frankly, it literally, since we were seeing it more and more in the news, we thought that we should explore this possibility, and it involves discussion, with obviously with the different bargaining units. David?
Yeah, actually, it's a really good segue. So the first question that I have gotten from quite a few people is, in the Executive Order 12A, there is an exemption for medical reasons, and it goes on to list all types of doctors who can write the exemption. And later on in 12A, there is a link to a document where mask wearing is required, and one of those are K-12 schools. So the questions I've been getting is, the document that says you have to wear a mask in school starts off by saying, let me read it to you exactly. It said, it was sent to me, 12B, subject to the exemption provided in Executive 12A. So the document 12A that references that you have to wear masks in school specifically says, with the exception, or it mentions the exemption. So is the Weston Public Schools honoring the exemption as listed in 12A if a parent had a doctor's letter stating that their student should not be required to wear a mask?
Can I speak towards this?
Yeah.
Just for the record, we had not one request for a mask exemption last year. Our medical advisor truly believes that, like a severe asthmatic, if it's that bad, they need to wear a mask. With a written doctor's exemption, we will consider giving them an exemption. But to date, the only students that have had issues are some of the pupil services students, that they just can't tolerate it, or it falls down. And there are some students that can't, and we take extra precautions, the paras, the teachers. But yeah, with a legitimate medical exemption, it would be taken into consideration.
So I think the basis of the question that I was asked was from an authority of who sets the policy. If I read 12A, I read it like 6 times. I'm not an attorney, but I read it multiple times, and it talks about a pretty vast or not vast, but a lot of different doctors. I interpret it that you can have a marriage, actually, I think he uses the words, a marriage counselor could write this note, a child that has anxiety. So it's very broad. That's where I'm looking for. In 12A, the exemption, the doctors who can write an exemption, it's exceptionally broad. So
Yes.
Okay, so
it is. I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've had discussions with both the health director as well as our medical advisor last year. And again, let me reiterate that we have not had one request for exemption, but that Dr. Marks would go over whatever is written by the specific physician. And then she would discuss with me and Lisa what her opinion is, and Lisa would have she would make the final decision.
Okay.
No, would we take a marriage counselor? No, it would have to be a legitimate, severe medical condition.
Okay, so for clarification, so the ultimate decision lays on that of the Weston Public Schools.
Exactly.
Okay, that was the one question I was asked for clarification on. The second one is that I've been reading a lot of studies, and because I got some notes from parents saying that mask wearing in the younger children, especially the kindergarten to second, third graders, really sets them back on the interpersonal communication, the reading of facial language and things of that nature. So is there anything in the curriculum that is going to be done to enhance or try and teach these children about nonverbal cues that you can't get when the face is covered by a mask? So it's not really it's more like, is there going to be something to supplement within the curriculum where teachers are going to make sure these kids are prepared in the future to understand what an unhappy frown means, or stuff like that?
I can jump in if you want.
Yeah, Tracy.
Thank you.
At each of the grade levels in different ways, and I don't think this is the best meeting to go into all of the details, we talk about emotional intelligence, social emotional learning. And so, yes, there is instruction around your own emotions, the emotions of people around you. I mean, I certainly can't say that you can perfectly replicate the experience for a student who would be typically observing facial expressions all day, every day. But there is instruction around that. And we're obviously sensitive to the fact that these students, especially our younger students, have had a very different school and, quite frankly, life experience up to this point with peers and teachers and anyone they interact with in the community. So it is addressed. I think we're mindful that they're coming to it with a different knowledge base. Even things like sharing are being taught differently because we have distancing in place. But we do know that that's a concern.
Okay. And the last,
I would. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Tracy. And the other thing I would like to reiterate is, the administration has been in a retreat for the past 3 days, and it was yesterday, I believe, that we spent time talking about the whole emotional intelligence, social emotional needs, and what we can do to help students, especially at the lower level. And the principals there were reviewing things like responsive classroom that is embedded in Hurlbut and WIS, morning meetings, all of that. If you're looking for the place where it would be taking place in the curriculum, it's important to note that those things become even that much more important when children are in masks. And to have that be done, especially in the month of September, when you're introducing expectations and rules and being a part of a community, because one of the big goals is how to connect again students and staff at every grade. I mean, we saw it even last year at the high school with 9th and 10th graders, that 9th graders hadn't really been in the building, how to help them with that social, emotional, and that interpersonal connection. So simply put, at the lower levels, that will become a more heightened priority in those particular settings, like the responsive classroom morning meeting, where the teacher needs to incorporate. And it's really about being aware and mindful of the fact that, yeah, I mean, learning how to read, communicate, and all of that, facial expressions is hard. The other thing is remember that, and I know it's a long day for these little ones, 6.5, 7 hours, but at least an hour and 15 minutes, they will be unmasked. So during that time, how can we also leverage their sort of social development when they are unmasked and take advantage of that?
All right, and the last item I was asked about, which actually I'm curious myself, we always hear the term community spread. What is the definition in Weston of community spread? And I think that the question, I was always curious about that, but the specific question that I was asked was more along the lines of, if I think I made a note, Lisa, what you said, 73% of our eligible students are vaccinated. I don't know where that is compared to the surrounding towns, but I think that we pretty much have, you know, we kind of go, do you happen to know about like Westport and Wilton?
You know, I don't know right now, David. I know that Mark Cooper can get the data. Every week we ask him, what's the data specifically? So that would be interesting. And I do have a call into our neighboring, you know, Wilton and Westport superintendents, because, you know, we're kind of all in this together. We're close towns. The families know each other across town. So I hate to suppose, but I think that in these light communities, it's probably very similar. And as far as the definition of a community spread, I'm smiling because we were talking at the retreat and they kept talking about, like, you know, doing pools, like pools of people, and how, you know, how it's spreading and this and that. And when they were talking about, I kept thinking they were talking about the swimming pool, and they're like, no, Lisa, it's the idea of the spread or how to monitor it. So
I think the basis of the question is, we refer to Weston as our community, right?
Yeah.
And so if Weston is, so what is the baseline for community? Like we had our quarantine, right? Me and my family had a couple of other families in Weston that we spent way too much of 2020 with. But that was our community, right? So I think what I was asked was, is Weston, even though we use Westport Weston Health District, is spread within Westport and Wilton, for example, going to skew our numbers? If we as Weston citizens really take to protection and encourage vaccination, and we have incredibly low spread within our community, what is the definition of community spread for the question was, what is the definition of community spread for the town of Weston? What is the radius? Is it 10 miles off our borders? Is it Fairfield County? That was sort of, you know, how do you define community spread? Because it appears to be a line that keeps getting moved further out.
Cheryl, would you like to start that? Because I'm happy to ask the health district for some more specific information on that. I mean, I can share what I know about, for example, different athletic programs that cross towns where at times there's been a spread within that. But
right. I mean,
do you have anything that you can add?
Yeah, basically they keep track of Westport, Weston, and Easton separately. So the numbers that they have currently, as he just told us today, there were 5 yesterday, whereas Westport had something like 30. So they keep the numbers for each town. There shouldn't be any overlapping, except when we have like the youth groups and the Department of Rec groups. A kid like that testing positive, but we don't do the quarantining, the health district does, and then they let the school know so we can go back and do contact tracing if it was one of our students in a classroom. But the numbers, and you could always call the health district, they're full of knowledge, but they keep each town separated. So community spread is literally Weston.
So will the decisions that the Weston Public Schools make relative to a COVID outbreak or the COVID numbers be essentially based solely on what's happening within the borders of our town.
Exactly. Even once we go back and I update the dashboard, those numbers that you see there are literally Weston students and staff only.
I
Now,
think Dave, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if it's one of our students playing on the youth soccer team, they would be included in that positive or quarantined list. But we don't keep track of other town positive cases.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that will become relevant when the executive order is lifted, right? That will become more relevant because the executive order right now is a blanket order throughout the state. So it doesn't actually discriminate or give any advantage to, any community, whether they're worse or better, right? But once the executive order is lifted, I think those become relevant. Also, we've had situations where, for example, we had a situation last year where, there was, students went to a party where there were people from many towns, right? And so we had a situation where that, when it comes to contact tracing, there's overlap there. It's not related to whether one community has a higher spread than the other, but as soon as one person tests positive there, the contact tracing traps everybody, right?
Tony.
If I can,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I just add one thing? I'm happy, David, to also try to get some more specifics because I think I understand that people are like, what is the community spread? A couple of things that were shared with us today that the health department said was, it was shared that the COVID cases that they're seeing in both Westport and Weston are specifically the Delta variant, which is the most contagious. They also talked today about 2 different mutations of the Delta variant across the country, which I don't know what that will mean, but they said that roughly Westport Weston was averaging 8 cases a day. Last week it was 33 in Westport. He did not have the figure for me in Weston, but he said that he would get it for me. And that from one day to the next, from Monday to Tuesday, just this week in Weston, there were 5 new cases. They also indicated that they are conservative, but they are very, very concerned that they have seen just in the last couple of weeks the rates going up and up and up. So hopefully they will stabilize and go down. But I can also ask him specifically to define that for us if we can get some more clarity on that term.
Yeah, I think the concept is rewarding good behavior rather than punishing bad behavior. So, we all kind of do our part. We're in this
Sure,
together.
exactly.
So,
Right.
yeah, so, that's, I think, the basis of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand.
The unfortunate thing is that there are quite a few breakthrough cases right now going on too with the Delta variant. So that's something that we're still learning about and trying to be mindful of, and that I'm sure we're going to have to address that as that starts to happen in the district too.
Yeah, fortunately, the ones I've read, they're minor coughs, runny noses, sneezing. Thank goodness, no hospitalizations or death.
Well, that's exactly right. So yeah, the severity of it is low, but unfortunately it puts at risk the people who aren't vaccinated.
Right, understood, yeah.
Victor, you had a question, and then Ken, sorry.
Well, I was just going to
Ken, go ahead.
to this, if I could, real quick. That one of the things in terms of spread that we'll be looking at and have looked at last year is within school spread. That's an important factor for us to continue to monitor. Correct, Cheryl? That's something that for us, if we see spread, and we didn't see very much spread at all last year within our system, given the protocols we've put in place. But that is something we're going to watch closely. Particularly, hopefully when we get to that point when we hopefully don't have to wear masks down the road. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, the comment I was going to make is I think we start off the meeting with the role of testing, which is important going forward. And I noticed in your communication, Lisa, that this PCR testing. My comment to the group is, as this, and I'm very hopeful that, I'm positive that, the reason the executive order is till September is I hope we're going to get over this pretty quickly. That being said, should we be thinking about more informal protocols in addition to the formal protocols? And by that, I mean, now there's availability of in-home testing. should we think about going forward, procuring the Abbott, test, not formally, but just keeping them in the, nursing offices for those ambiguous cases? We don't have to answer that right now, but I just think as things mitigate and things become less formal, we don't have to, be thinking about governor orders. Just, is there anything that we should leverage on the more informal part is my point.
Thank you, Victor. That's a really good point. I've made a note of it, and I do think that it's worth considering. And it kind of goes to David's point that, like, we're all in this together, and everyone is really trying to do the best we can. And you see things that are happening in other states nationally, and we say, we're really trying to do a good job here. Let's hope that we can move away from the mask. Let's hope that over the course of the late fall and winter, that it could become a parental choice, a staff choice. I am hopeful of those things. I certainly respect when people say, I have the right to make that decision for my child. At the same time, I have to worry about, the 2,300 that are here. So it's very challenging, and I hope that we can leverage more informal ways. I know that the state had also spoke to us in these weekly meetings that we have, and they said that there were testing, that districts could sign up if they wanted to have, testing sites and have unvaccinated children tested was something that they had talked about. And if we wanted to, sign up for that, where they're really focusing though, and they shared that with us, is high densely populated areas like the inner city, that would be first where they would start, which certainly makes sense just because of the sheer numbers. But we will consider and certainly talk about and ask our advisor and the Department of Health, and the day superintendents are going to start meeting again every Friday of what other strategies could we leverage in a more informal way to keep our kids safe.
Lisa, I have one just question on clarification. There was a part in your note that, and you mentioned it again,
Sure,
that says if you're vaccinated and asymptomatic, you don't have to quarantine. Now, that's assuming that you're not testing positive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So
it's, yes,
someone
exactly.
interpreted that as saying, and I got a question, does that mean that if you're asymptomatic and you're testing positive, you don't have to quarantine? And that's like, no, that's assuming you haven't tested positive, right? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So are we having
Thank you for
everyone
that clarification.
So are we having everyone who's exposed, vaccinated or not, getting tested then? Is that how we're addressing it, or?
Lisa,
I
I can
believe the
handle
way
that
we're-
if you want.
Thank
It's
you.
not mandated that they get tested.
Okay.
But if they don't get tested, then their mask stipulation goes for a longer period of time. So even if you're vaccinated, and I can speak to it from athletics, it makes a little more sense because we're outside more.
Right.
If you are a close contact and you're vaccinated and you're asymptomatic, you have to be in a mask for the 14-day period, unless you get a negative test after day 3 and negative PCR test, then you can unmask. So if they choose not to get tested, which is each person's choice, they would just have to be masked up in any situation, inside or outside, until their quarantine, quote unquote, quarantine period would be over. They're not quarantining, but they'd have to be in a mask, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. But having said that, then are we making testing easy? Because the last thing, a lot of parents, various kids, all the schools, and now they have a kid that comes back and shoot, now I have to figure out a way to get him or her tested.
We highly are recommending testing. If we have to send someone home that has been identified as a close contact, we are highly recommending testing. If they refuse to get tested, then they have to quarantine the full 10 days.
We're fortunate in that we had to quarantine with one of my children last year because of the bus, but, and this was also back when the testing area was open over in Westport. That's closed now. The long, whatever it was, anyway. So when you send them home for any sort of quarantine, and let the parents know that there's an exposure, then of course you're also going to share with the parents where they can go to get the child tested, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. I give them several different choices. First stop, your pediatrician. But yeah, I have a bunch of numbers and local clinics, and yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Sure.
Mark, I have one more question, which is CIAC and the DPH on the same page now? Everybody?
That is a fair question. Yes, they're actually working very closely together this whole summer.
Okay.
It's very positive. Every meeting we've had with them has been in conjunction with DPH and their SMSA and CDC. So yeah, we're in pretty good shape as far as that goes this year. I know it was a little discombobulated last year, but much better.
Oh, great. Good to hear. Any other questions or comments from the board members? Well, thanks, Lisa, and everyone. This was very informative. Now, the other thing is that, you know, we alluded to issues around social emotional learning and curriculum, and I think those are really good topics to handle in length in curriculum committee and also in the full board meeting. These are really important topics, but not really for this meeting, but definitely in September. Those are some of the things that we're going to start really digging into in some detail. Great.
Yes.
There were no other questions or comments. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you again. This was really helpful, and more to come.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.